Now, I'm not going to discuss every poem that I assign for you to read during this section, because if I do, then what are you going to discuss in the discussion board? But I do want to talk about Shakespeare's poem, Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day? And I'm going to read it. And by the way, poetry is meant to be read aloud. You know, we read them isolated to ourselves, but poetry is really meant, like drama, to be read aloud and experienced. So this is from Willie. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and oft is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of the fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade. When in eternal lines to time thou growest, so long as men can breathe, their eyes this can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Now, this is a sonnet, 14 lines, rhyming pattern, and Shakespeare is very famous for his sonnets. And what does this mean? He says, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? And he talks about how beautiful a summer day is, but he also points out that sometimes there are rough winds that shake the buds of May and make it maybe not so pleasant, and that sometimes the eye of heaven, which is the sun, shines too hot. So he's comparing her to a summer day, but he's saying you are more temperate and more fair because you don't have all those other things going on, the buds being shaken and the hot sun beating down on you. So he's saying that she's even better than a summer day. But it even goes on beyond that, because he tells her that she literally is going to be that summer's day forever. She is not ever going to be a winter's day. And when I talked about the road not taken, I briefly mentioned the fact that the seasons represent stages of a person's life, and winter represents death, old age and death, and that summer is the prime of life. It is young adulthood, even though I'm 56 and I'm in my prime of life, but we're not going to go into that. He's telling her she's always going to be that fair. And why is she always going to be that fair? Why is her eternal summer never going to fade? Shakespeare's being rather egotistical in this, actually, because he's saying, I've written about you. I've written a poem about you. And as long as people read this poem, you are going to remain young and alive. Now, if we don't read this poem, and in a few hundreds of years, Shakespeare's not even going to be a memory. Someday this earth is going to burn and our sun is going to become a red giant. And of course, then this mystery lady whom Shakespeare addresses is not even going to be read in words. But for our purposes, in this time, in his time, he is saying, because I have written about you, you are going to always live and you are always going to be beautiful. And the thing is, we don't know to whom he is addressing, who he's talking about or talking to in this poem, but it doesn't make any difference because we assign images to poetry. And so even though we don't know, it doesn't make any difference because we still think of beauty. So this can apply to every woman. And sorry guys, he's not writing about you. This can apply to any woman or many women when we think of beauty. So some other things in this poem. Death shall not brag that you wander in his shade. So death is not going to have any reign over this woman. She's going to live forever. And back in the early part of the poem, he says, summer's lease hath all too short a date. Summer is fleeting, but you, my beautiful dear, will last forever.